websites using the Quarto and RStudio tools. And so a lot of this will be very hands-on. Let me get rid of my thing. The intention is that this is going to be a pretty hands-on, like code along sort of workshop, but there's going to be a little bit of sort of content and some slides too, but hopefully not too many. Okay, so the things that we'll cover in this workshop, we're going to get familiar with RStudio and Quarto, which are two tools that are created by the company called Posit, which used to be called RStudio, but they've changed their name to Posit. We are going to create and deploy or publish a very basic website, and then we'll go through some ideas and actually like walk through some ways to customize that website in a few different ways. So yeah, and there's a screenshot here of a really nice website someone made with Quarto that this Sam Chick is her name. She's also provided some nice blogs on how to do stuff with how to make websites with Quarto. I don't know if she has any general Quarto content. It might just be about websites. Okay. And so we're going to create a website, which is basically we're going to take multiple different documents called Quarto documents and then put them together into a unit using all these sort of automated tools. And so these websites are fairly customizable. You can specify how things are laid out, how to navigate between, or like what the navigation is set up as, and what the sort of theme or style of the website is. And so some places where you might want to create a website is like the example shown here, and sort of what we'll kind of make ourselves as a professional website, so that can document and share the work that you've done with other people. You can also use these websites, and some people mentioned this in the chat, like to display research that you've done, and also to put up like teaching materials or tutorials or things like that. So yeah, there's lots of different places that you can use this content, I think. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with talking about RStudio. It sounds like some folks here are familiar with RStudio. Maybe some people are not, but we'll sort of get a lay of the land in terms of that tool. So RStudio is what is referred to as an integrated development environment, or an IDE. This is an example of a platform that is used for writing code, makes it easy to write code. There's a bunch of IDEs out there. If you use Python or some other languages, there are things like PyCharm or Visual Studio. Those are another examples of an IDE. But for programming in R, the RStudio IDE is the most common one by far. So yeah, it's basically a really useful tool in a lot of different ways. And so we're going to use it to create our websites because it simplifies some of the steps a lot. And I wanted to mention, if people are familiar with RStudio, but you don't yet use projects in RStudio, that's something that I generally highly recommend people start doing. Projects in RStudio is another functionality of the platform that just makes it way easier to organize your work. Like basically it enables you to like organize by project or topic, all of the files associated with a particular project. And then it also solves problems with working directories. So yeah, for anyone here who's programmed in R and struggled with working directory or path issues, if you use projects in RStudio, it solves a lot of those problems. And we're going to create a project to hold our website here. So you'll have an example or a chance to do that. Yeah, oh, I see clapping. I assume that's for projects. Yeah. Woohoo. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up RStudio, and we'll just look at some of the how it's laid out and the pieces that will be most relevant to what we're doing here. So feel free to follow along. So go ahead and open up RStudio. And so actually I'll have everyone, once you've opened up, so hopefully everyone had a chance to install RStudio before this. And once everybody has opened up RStudio, can you give me a green check so that I know we're ready to move on? Checks. If you haven't installed RStudio or you're having troubles with that for some reason, feel free to say something in the chat or give me a red X. Okay, looks like we're pretty good. Okay, so there's 4, well, we can only see 3 panes right now, so I'll make it into 4. RStudio is set up so that there are 4 panes, basically split up into 4 different parts. And then each of the parts has a bunch of tabs that are useful for different things. Some of them we won't touch on at all here, and then some of them are pretty important. So this upper left-hand tab, I just realized mine's probably organized differently than everyone else's. I think probably if you have the default, I think this pane is over on this side. So sorry in advance for that. Oh yeah, Patty, I saw that you couldn't get things installed, so sorry about that. But hopefully if you are able to, then you'll be able to follow along. We're also supposed to record this, and we're going to post it on YouTube.
It is recording.
Oh, okay. I missed the pop-up thing, so thank you for taking care of that. We will post the recording of this workshop onto YouTube, so if you want to go back and rewatch parts of it, you can. And we'll share that after the workshop. Sorry. So yeah, so we have one pane that is where the files that you are working with will show up. And I just opened up an empty R script for right now, but I'll get rid of that in a minute. And then some of the other important components, is, yeah. In this lower right-hand corner here, there's this Files tab. And so this basically replicates the file structure that's on your computer. So any of the files you have on your computer, you can navigate using this Files interface to go to the files that are on your computer. So it's basically just like a, it's a mirror of all of the files in your computer. And when we start creating files, we'll see them appear here. So that's another place that we'll pay attention to. And there's a couple of other tabs that'll show up or that'll come up as we're working through this materials, like background jobs. When you render your website, the background jobs is where that information shows up. And I think that was the only, for right now, that's the only functionality of RStudio that I wanted to make sure everyone was familiar with. So before I move on to Quarto, does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Okay, no, looks like we're good for now. Okay, so we walked through RStudio. It's this tool for generally for writing R code, and we'll use it for creating our Quarto website. Okay, so the other tool that is important here is Quarto. So what is Quarto? This might be a little bit more complicated, but so if folks here have used R Markdown files before, Quarto's basically the next generation of R Markdown. And so it works fairly similarly to R Markdown with a lot of extra nice features. So if you're using R Markdown files, it could be helpful for you to switch over to using Quarto files. And it should be a pretty easy transition because it's so similar. But so basically the concept behind Quarto, which was also the concept behind R Markdown, is that you would write these plain text files. And so there's a screenshot here of a plain text file on the left. It's just a file with a bunch of text in it. You can write one of those, and then you can use the RStudio tool to render that into what you see here on the right, which is a nice HTML version of that plain text file. Or you can also use it to create PDFs or Word documents or a variety of different types of formats. And so, yeah, this is a really nice a tool to use for formatting your text and making it look pretty, or making it have extra functionality like links. And then it's also it's really nice to use Quarto because you can put chunks of code, R code or other languages into your plain text. Like right here, they have a plot. But then when you render that plain text into HTML or PDF or whatever, it will actually print out that plot for you interspersed with all of your text. And so especially for things like writing reports for your research or sharing what you've done or remembering what you've done later on. Like you can describe in the text, you know, oh, I ran, you know, this statistical analysis for this reason. And it can then also be interspersed with like the results of the statistical analysis that you've run in R. So this is generally a really, really useful tool, especially when you're wanting to remember later on what you've done or when you're wanting to share with other people. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually open up an example of one of these Quarto documents, and we'll walk through the pieces of it really briefly. And the whole reason we're doing this is because Quarto websites are built around Quarto documents. So we talked about how a website is basically a bunch of documents put together into a unit. Those documents are Quarto documents. So you need to kind of understand the underlying like basis for those websites by understanding a little bit more about what Quarto is and what it does. And I actually am going to, let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull over a different RStudio window that I have open right now. So again, this is still RStudio, but the notes for this workshop that I put together are actually in a Quarto doc. And so you can see right here, this is a file that is called Quarto websites notes.qmd. And so you can tell something's a Quarto file because it's got that QMD extension. And so this is an example of a Quarto file. And one of the nice things that RStudio has integrated when they switched from R Markdown to Quarto is that you can go sort of back and forth between the plain text of the file. So this is what the plain text for this file looks like, to a sort of like rendered on the fly version with this visual tab. And so that's pretty nice. But so yeah, if you haven't had experience with R Markdown or Quarto, it can take a little bit of time to pick up on the syntax that you can use to format your document. And so the first piece at the top here of these types of documents, it's something that's referred to as a YAML chunk. And so we're talking about a couple of different sort of languages here that we're using. We're using Markdown and we're using something called YAML, Y-A-M-L. And basically what this first chunk up here does, let me make my screen a little bigger. Basically what this chunk does is it specifies some of the metadata about your file. So here for this particular example of a Quarto doc, I have the title of the Quarto. I have my name as the author, what format I want it to be rendered into. So I chose HTML. And then also that I want to use this visual editor, this like tab up here. And then after that YAML chunk, which that can contain different things depending on what you're doing. After that, that's where the markdowns, the actual content of your Quarto doc begins. And so you can see there's a bunch of different formatting, basically use special characters to specify the formatting. So you can see right here, these are headers, which are specified by pound symbols at the beginning of a line. I also have a table. And so it's nice because you can switch back and forth between the plain text and this sort of like on the fly rendered version of the document. So you can see this is a header. This is what was marked by the pound symbols. And then this is a table that I created with Markdown. And then there's a bunch of text and links and lists. So if we switch back to the plain text of this, you can see I created those links by using this sort of formatting. You can create lists by putting numbers or asterisks at the beginning of a line. There's basically a lot of formatting here. And we're not going to go into super detail about any of this because that's sort of beyond the scope of this workshop. But I just wanted to show an example of a Quarto document that I think, yeah, Eric included a link in the chat to this Quarto document on GitHub. So if you want to look at it, you can look at it there. And if you want to know more about syntax options, let's see, I'm sizing my window so I can actually see it. There's a lot of resources out there for what kind of syntax you can include in your Quarto documents. But there's one that's the Quarto group specifically put out. So yeah, if you want to know what sorts of things you can include in each of your Quarto files, there's a bunch of different ideas here on this website here. Yeah, so you can see things like you can include code chunks. You can have it display equations properly formatted, lots of different things. So yeah, this is really, it's a really useful tool. And if you, like me, have like spent a lot of time struggling with like getting like Word docs and stuff to be formatted correctly, in some ways, using Markdown for your formatting of your documents simplifies things a lot. And I kind of feel like there's fewer options too, so there's like less stuff to sort of screw up. Okay, I see a question in the chat about the R version. Yeah, I'm still on R version 4.2.3, and the most recent is 4.3.1. Those versions are pretty close, so it should be fine.
But also, just to clarify, I was just going to clarify that Quarto actually doesn't have to use R. So unlike R Markdown, which was part of R, one of the things about Quarto is that it doesn't rely on R. And we're not going to, I don't think we're going to include any R code in our example websites today. So it shouldn't matter.
Yeah. It's good generally to like try to stay up to date on versions of all of the programs on your computer. But I actually had to roll back because using the most recent version broke something on a project I was working on. So yeah.
There's a question from Torbett. Yeah.
Hi, Torbett.
Hi. So, in the data science world, I think we always feel like we're behind. So kind of two related questions, this kind of global overview before we get into the nitty gritty. Would you say Quarto is the way like data scientists are moving now for creating websites? And just the advantages of using Quarto versus like Weebly or the other ones out there? I'm gathering it's going to be this connection with RStudio. And just those are really basic questions, but I just kind of want to get that out there as we go forward. Yeah.
So I'll say, I think Eric or Renata probably have some thoughts about this. But if you are interested in data science and you want to demonstrate your like skills using something like Quarto to create a website is a nice way of basically like, proving that you know how to use some of these more modern tools. You mentioned Weebly, and like there's other platforms for creating websites that are a lot more like point and click, like drag things into place on the browser. I mean, if you need a website and you need it fast and like don't want to have to mess around with anything too much, that can be an easy way to create a website. Like in my mind, it's better to have a professional website than not, regardless of what you're using. Like I mean, I might be alone in this, but when I when I Google someone's name and if they don't have a website with this, their projects and like what they're doing listed on it, I'm kind of like, oh, that's odd. Like, tell me what you're doing, like share your stuff with me. So I think having a professional website at all of any form is better than not. And yeah, I think probably at least in like the R-based world, Quarto websites is like a pretty it's sort of like the most modern tool, I would say, but there's probably others out there. Also, Eric pointed out to me, I didn't think about this, but one of the example websites that I linked that I was going to talk about later on, but he pointed out to me is that this was actually made not with Quarto. Oh, I guess our GitHub pages right here, which I overlooked because I went really fast. And she's taught workshops on creating Quarto websites, so I just assumed her website was made with Quarto. But this is actually made with, I think you said Blogdown.
With Hugo, Hugo, or there's an R package called Blogdown.
So there's other ways to make websites similarly, or other tools you can use. So
I think Quarto is nice because, as we're going to see today, it's really simple to get a basic website going. And then, but because it is, built on these plain text markdown files and code and stuff like that, it is very customizable if you really want to get super nerdy about stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say there was, I think in this blog post from Sam Chick about Quarto, I think, so she talks about some of the other options for using like R tools to create websites. So feel free to investigate those. But yeah, I think Quarto is really pretty straightforward and easy to use. I say that now. Hopefully I don't eat my words in a few minutes, but yeah, good questions. Does that help, Torbett?
Yeah, great. It's just great going for, just kind of get an idea of what we're going into here. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to think about the context of all of this. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about using Quarto itself. If you then want to actually, like, this visual is nice, but if you want to actually render your Quarto document, see what it looks like, there's this button right here, render. If you click on it, it should, after doing a couple of things. So this is what the HTML version of that text file looks like. And you can specify where that pops up. So I have it set right now so that the preview for that HTML document is right here in this viewer pane right in RStudio. You can also select this preview and window button. And so when you render it, it should pop up within a separate window on your screen. So yeah, just wanted to mention that about Quarto. Okay, does anyone have any questions about Quarto itself right now? It's a good tool for everyone to get familiar with, probably if you're like in the R world, if you're wanting to have an easier way to sort of like put together text and code. And Quarto's gotten, from what I've heard, I haven't used it myself, but it's gotten way easier to create manuscripts using the tool. And so that's another thing that you can do with Quarto is like and then when you for example, like go back and have to change part of your analysis, you rerun the code, your numbers are different. You would normally in like a Word doc or a Google Doc have to go and change those numbers by hand, maybe overlook some of them, like maybe just copy and paste them incorrectly, and then your manuscript has incorrect numbers in it. But if you use something like Quarto, you can actually run all your analyses and insert the numbers from your analyses like automatically. So you don't ever have to go in and like change that from, like 10 species to 12 or 100 genes to 105, for example. So, but I have not used Quarto to create a manuscript yet, so I can't personally speak for that. Okay, so that is Quarto, this tool that we use to create these documents, these rendered documents. Yeah, and there's a link in the slides to those workshop notes if you're curious about what a Quarto document can look like. And the workshop notes one isn't the best example because, like what we talked about, there's no actual code in it. It's more interesting when you start including chunks of code. So. Okay, so now let's get to the reason that we're all here. Hopefully you have the foundational stuff down. Let's go ahead and use Quarto and RStudio combined to quickly and easily, hopefully, set up an initial sort of bare bones version of a website. I see a question. How would edits from peers work on Quarto files? That is a great question.
That is a great question. I think it's a subject for another workshop, possibly, but we can, because it's all plain, the short answer is because it's all plain text, we can host all the files for the website on a platform like GitHub that allows people to collaborate.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that today.
Yeah, that's a whole sort of another thing. But yeah, definitely Git and GitHub is what we would recommend if you're wanting to work on Quarto files together. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, like, I guess you can email files back and forth. I don't recommend doing this. You can email files back and forth and like modify them and things like that with your collaborators, but I think that could get hairy really fast. So yeah. Good question though. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into actually creating our first website. So everyone hopefully still has RStudio open. Let me see if we can make this a little bigger again. Oh, actually, I'll probably have to make it bigger in a second when I start the project. Okay, and so basically using RStudio and Quarto together, we're going to basically have a pretty straightforward point-and-click way of putting together a skeleton of a website. And so we are choosing here to use RStudio because that's what we're most familiar with, but you can actually use other platforms to create Quarto websites, so some of the other IDEs that are out there, and you can also do it through the command line, but we're using RStudio because I think it has a lot of nice functionality for creating websites like this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an R project, which is what I talked about earlier. So again, if you're writing R code, and working on research projects and you're not using RStudio projects yet, highly recommend. And so you're going to want to go ahead and in the upper right-hand corner where it says project, probably says project none right now, you're going to click on that and we're going to create a new project. You can see I like projects, right? I have like all my all my work basically is in RStudio projects. Go ahead and click new project. Apparently I wait a long time. We're going to create a new directory. So basically we're going to create a new folder somewhere on our computer to hold all these files. And then we're going to very conveniently select the option Quarto website. Okay, and then the last steps that we need to do is we need to pick a name for the folder that's holding our Quarto website files, and then also figure out where we're going to put this folder on our computer. So what this RStudio project functionality is doing is that it's going to create a new folder with the directory name, and then it's going to automatically create some files inside of that folder. And so we want to name this something. I'm going to call mine teaching example. If you're wanting to turn this into your professional website, you could do like your name, website, or something like that. Yeah, you can kind of put anything you want here. And then you're going to want to figure out where on your computer you want to put this. I'm going to go ahead and put this new folder just on my desktop. So probably delete this afterwards, but you can put it anywhere you want. And then we're going to keep the rest of these options as they are. So yeah, we're trying to do this sort of the quickest and easiest way. So we're avoiding using like version control, or avoiding using Git and GitHub, but you can also integrate those tools, especially if you're already using them into creating your Quarto website. But we're not going to do that here. So go ahead and click Create Project. It'll take a minute. Okay, and so now some stuff has changed, hopefully, in your RStudio window. In this upper right-hand corner, you should see the name of that new project that you created. You should also, probably a couple of files have popped up, and we'll talk about what those are. And then one of the nice things about using RStudio projects is that now in your files pane, it will automatically move you into the new folder that it just created. And so kind of to prove that this created a new folder, if you go to your file finder, I can't remember what that's called on Word or on Windows machines. But if I go to my desktop, I see that there's this brand new teaching example folder. So when I created the new R project, it created this new folder called teaching example, and then it also created some files. And so you can see those files here in my Finder window, but you can also see those files here in the Files tab. Those are the same files, just being displayed in two different places. Oh, yes, Explorer. Thank you. Helpful. So yeah, if everybody is at this point and you can see these five files, and you have a new R project for your Quarto website, can you give me a green check? If you haven't gotten to this point or struggling with something, feel free to ask a question or do a red check. The red X's. Okay. Oh, yes, because Patty, sorry. Hopefully you'll be able to get these programs installed on your computer. Okay, that was mostly everyone. Looks like everyone besides Patty, sorry, is with us. So, okay, great. So you've now created basically a very basic example of a Quarto website. And we'll look at the rendered version of that website in a minute. But so let's talk about the files that were automatically created here. So the first one to talk about real quick is that you should have a file that's called, that's a .rproj file. This file is created in any RStudio project that you make, and it basically contains information about your project. And so you should never need to like really do anything with this file. Like you never look at it or modify it, but it will show up anytime you create an RStudio project. And then there's a few other files that are specific to Quarto websites here. So the first one, and this is one of the ones that popped up, This is _quarto.yaml. And so, yeah, this is basically the file that is where you specify kind of like how your whole project or your whole website is organized, right? So it's got metadata about what the website is, what the pages are on it, and what order they're in. And this is where we can do customization of like how the website's navigation works, how the pages are laid out, and what theme you're using. So you can see there's a couple of things in here that were put in here automatically. And a little bit later when we do customization, we'll add and change some of the stuff here so that you can customize sort of like how your website is structured. And so this uses YAML, which if you remember talking about before with the Quarto documents, how they have the YAML chunk at the top. This is very similar. It's just the entire file has YAML in it, this markup language. When we created this website project, it also automatically created two Quarto documents. So the index and the about. And basically these are pages that are on your website. And so you'll see in a minute when we render this, that, yeah, these are the content here that's on each of these is what then populates each of the pages on your website. Okay, and then the last file here is the styles.css file. This is a plain text file. I presume is used for adding CSS to your website to do more fancy things. I've never actually done anything with this file, and it's kind of outside of, it's like more advanced than what we're covering in this workshop, but it also created this file too, but we're not going to touch this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and render our website. So it'll render each of these Quarto documents and then also put the whole website together. And so there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One way, which is the way that I was doing it, and I thought it was the only way, is that within either of these Quarto documents, you can click this render button, just like we did when we were working with one Quarto document by itself. Or you can go down to this build tab right here and then click render website. And so if you click that, it should hopefully, as long as there are no errors or problems, it'll show us what the website looks like. Okay, and so I have mine to set to show up here in the viewer tab, or it might have popped up in a new window for you. And so hopefully now comparing these two side by side, so you can see it looks like a website. It's got a drop-down menu right here with the two different pages that we currently have. And then there's a search bar. And then this is the name currently of my website. And then, so if we're looking at the home page right here, and then we look at the index file, you can see how these sort of map onto one another. Similarly, if you go to the about page, you can see they put in a little chunk of R code here. I guess we do have some R code here. And then that R code has been executed and shown on the website. Okay, I want to stop again and make sure that everyone has gotten to this point. So is everybody seeing this example website with the about and the home pages and the different content? If this looks good and it worked, give me a green check. If you got an error, something didn't work, red X. Okay, I see one red X. What is going on? You can either unmute yourself, or if you want to put it in the Zoom chat, whatever you're comfortable with. I see a couple of X's.
I think I just missed how you did that. So
Oh.
I was just distracted for a moment.
Yeah,
that's fine. It sounds like that was multiple people.
So there's another, a couple other questions that are maybe related, because maybe not everybody has the build tab. So yeah, you can use the menu.
Okay, so I see. Yeah, Brian said that you had to use this build tab, or sorry, build up here and click render website. So other people might have to do that too. One thing about Quarto is that it's a pretty new tool. They really or I started really hearing about it last fall. And so some of the stuff is like, they're trying to improve a lot of it, and they're adding a lot of new functionality. And so your version of RStudio and Quarto can make a difference here. So yeah, there's a few different ways you can build this. If you have the build here, you can click render website. That's what Brian did. Yes. Oh, and sorry. Okay, I should have. I don't know if I want to fix it right now. How my RStudio looks is different than how some of yours does. And I'm like, where's the preferences? Oh my gosh.
Tools.
View?
I was just typing it in the chat. In tools, global options.
That's right. Okay.
And if you go into the pane layout, that's where you can check a box to turn on that build tab. If you don't have it, you can.
Oh, nice.
Include it in whichever pane you want there.
Okay. Yeah. So you see here, there's a checkbox, which I guess if your version's old enough, maybe build isn't there at all. But also, I'm going to rearrange my panes. I think this is how RStudio comes default, is the source and console on the left. Is that true? Can someone confirm?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it was probably confusing for people. Okay, so now hopefully it looks a little bit more like yours. So yeah, now the build tab is in the upper right-hand corner, probably for most people.
Which of those boxes do we check to get the pane showing?
The build.
Okay, build. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something also in the chat they mentioned. Yeah. Once I render my website, it basically opened up in the browser instead of in the RStudio.
Yeah, and I think that that's because of what option you have selected here. So next to the render button, and I think this only shows up when you're looking at a Quarto document, but this little gear, if you click on it, you can select preview in window, and then when you render, it should open up in your browser window. If you want it to show up in RStudio,
which is fine.
You're gonna have to, yeah, it's fine either way.
Yeah.
I mean, note that, so see now mine is showing up in the browser, like it looks like a couple people's were, yeah. This is not published online yet, right? It's showing up in your browser, but it's it's running locally on your computer, not on the internet. But yeah, so it's just like, depends on your preference. For some things, I like to see what they look like in the browser, and then some things I like when it shows up in the RStudio window. It's just personal preference, so yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, for folks who wanted to open it up in the viewer pane, were you able to do that now? Or I can show that again. Yes.
I think everybody's got it.
Sorry, so Tariq just had a question. We're going to put the YouTube, or we're going to put the recording of the workshop onto YouTube, and then after the workshop, I will email everybody with a link to that and some other resources. So yeah, if you have to leave, you'll be able to access this after the fact. Okay, cool. Okay, looks like everyone is up to speed right now. Thanks for coming. Okay. Oh, one more thing I was going to talk about when I was doing this. So when we render our website, you can see this backgrounds tab, it pops up and like, basically it's like doing, it's rendering in the background, it's doing some things. Oh, oops, I want to change this to render in the viewer. Yeah, so as your files are being rendered into the website, this backgrounds tab is basically like showing that stuff is happening. I think if you have errors or something's not working with your website rendering, that some information about that could show up here. So yeah, just so you're familiar with that. One other thing that happened when you rendered your website is that you should see now in your files, in your project, there's a new folder that's called _site. And so within that, it's got all the rendered HTML and some other stuff that basically helps create your website. So yeah, and I think you shouldn't ever really need to modify any of these by hand. They are automatically generated when you click render website, but that's where all the files for your website are actually stored. Okay, so what do we do if we change something about our website and then we want to see what it looks like again? So let's go ahead and change some components of our website. So right now, our website up here, it's the name that comes up is, for me, is teaching example. For you, it's whatever you called your R project. We can go ahead and change that. And so if we go into our Quarto YAML, underscore Quarto YAML file. Open it up if it's not open already. You can see right here, one of the components is called title. And then it automatically put in the name of the folder, but you can put in anything you want here. So let's say I'm creating a website about, for myself, for my work. And so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna rename my website to my name. You can put your name in or put something else in here if you want. Just change it to something else. I think that's the only place I have to change it. Yeah. So now when you save the Quarto YAML and then you re-render the website, hopefully if I did this right, the name of the website should now be my name instead of teaching underscore example. So yeah. Let's see something else. Oh, so yeah, so as you're changing, and this is a sort of general workflow that we suggest, is like, as you're changing your files, your underlying files bit by bit, you want to go ahead and render the website to see if the changes are what you want it to look like. And so just like when you're programming, you probably don't want to go and change the files that are on your website, like a bunch, like make many, many, many changes and then render, because it's more likely that there'll be errors or problems. And so it's better to change things sort of piece by piece and then render it to test and see if it looks like what you want it to look like. So we right now are using the RStudio's like point and click to render this website. But you can also do some of these tasks with your Quarto website in on the command line. And we're going to have to do this later on. So I'm going to show you right now. So your RStudio should have a terminal tab. And this is basically a command line interface. So if you open that up and look at it, another way that you can look at what that website looks like, I think this should work. I didn't actually test it. But you should be able to use Quarto commands. So if you type in Quarto space preview and hit enter, this also renders the website just like how when you clicked those buttons it did. You're just doing the same thing in two different ways. And I only bring that up. I would like to stay away from using the command line at all for this, but we're going to be doing something on the command line later on. So it's a very brief introduction. Okay, does anyone have any questions at this point before we try to publish this online? Any questions about the pieces of the website, or we'll talk about how to change some of the other stuff later on, but any questions about rendering? Okay, everybody's good so far? Cool. Okay, so right now you can see your website. Actually, I can't because I need to render it locally. So you can see your website, you can see what it looks like. It's really basic right now, and it's just got this sort of like, this default text in it. But right now you're the only person that can see it, and the only way anyone else could see it is if they also, if they had copies of all the files that you were using and they rendered it themselves. So we want to go ahead and put this online so that other people can look at it too. And so it's pretty easy to do that, but there's many different platforms that you can use to render or deploy your website. So I think in my slides, I have the list of things. Yep. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different options. There's Quarto Pub, GitHub Pages, Posit Connect, and Netlify are pretty common ones. And there's a bunch of different pros and cons. Some of these options can cost money if you want more functionality. If you want to do things like have a customized domain, I think you have to use something like Netlify or some of these other platforms. And also if you want more, like you want a private website that people have to like log into, some of these can do that, some of them can't. And yeah, and then GitHub Pages is a really common way to deploy websites, Quarto websites, but that requires knowledge of Git and GitHub. And so if you know those things or want to know those things and then put your website in GitHub Pages, that process also is like not terribly difficult. But learning Git and GitHub is difficult. And that's something our group does, by the way. If you're interested in learning, we teach that content. but it can be a little bit of an uphill learning curve. So yeah, this is the on the Quarto documentation. They have sort of a bunch of information about these different platforms for publishing your website. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to use QuartoPub because it is free, it is easy, doesn't require version control. And so that's what we're going to use here. But I just wanted to point out that University of Arizona actually has a Posit Connect account. And so Posit Connect is a nice alternative to something like QuartoPub because it has more of these like features to it, like, you know, making sure only certain people can see your website, you know, just like other things. And I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, this is terrible. So in my group, we use Posit Connect all the time. Oh, you can also deploy like Shiny apps onto Posit Connect, R Markdowns, Quarto pages, a lot of different things. So this is a useful tool that U of A pays for. So if you're interested in getting an account, you can ask us about that or go to this website and it walks you through how to sort of set your account up. One note about the Posit Connect account at U of A, they want people primarily using it for research purposes, so not for like class work, basically. So that's like one limitation that they talk about, but otherwise it's a nice platform.
There's a question, do any of these options allow creating aliases within the arizona.edu domain? My guess is probably no.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's like a UITS question.
Yeah.
And if they were to put it on an arizona.edu domain, I assume they'd probably want it like using UA's infrastructure. Although, yeah. I mean, if you use Posit Connect, it uses an Arizona-ish. Yeah. So
it'll be at viz.datascience.arizona.edu / the name of your website.
Yeah. So this is sorry, this app's kind of big, so it's got a lot of data on it. But yeah, so if you want to host something and have it have sort of an arizona.edu email address, Posit Connect is one way to do that. Okay, I promise there's an app here. I don't know, it's not loading. And it's not, oh, there we go. It's a little bit of like a side thing, but like, yeah, so this is a Shiny app that we made for someone that is hosted on Posit Connect. You can host Quarto websites here too in a similar way. And so that may maybe get you part of the way. If you want an actual arizona.edu domain, yeah, you'd have to ask someone at probably UITS about that. It's a good question. Ooh, awesome. I see Ryan in the chat shared some resources. Great. Yeah. And oh, and we only covered some, I only covered some of these. So there's some stuff here that, yeah, I don't think I use Font Awesome at all. So thanks for sharing. Okay. So a bunch of different places that you can publish your Quarto app or website, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to use QuartoPub. And so the first thing that requires is that you have a QuartoPub account. That was a prerequisite for the course. Does everyone have, if you have a QuartoPub account that you already created, could you do a green check for me? See if people are ready for this. You need a QuartoPub account to put anything on QuartoPub. So. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of green checks. Okay, and if there's anyone out there who, okay, I think almost everyone green checked, but if you don't yet, you can go to QuartoPub and create an account. Okay, and so let's go ahead and go back to RStudio, and we're going to take our current existing sort of very basic website, and we're going to put it on QuartoPub, hopefully. So like I was saying before, so this is the step where, like, unfortunately, there's no like buttons like to click on in RStudio that will push this to QuartoPub. So we need to do this in the command line. And so we were on the terminal a minute ago. If you want to go ahead and navigate to the terminal tab. And like I said before, this is the command line or shell on your computer. One of the nice things about using RStudio projects, and I know I feel like I'm sitting on like the RStudio project like soapbox right now, but it is really nice. But one of the nice things about using these projects is that in your terminal, it should have already put you like in the right location on your computer, in the folder where all these files are. I guess maybe we should test that. Like if people type in ls and hit enter, what should pop up here in the terminal window are the names of those files that we have so far. So like about.qmd, index, the rproj file. So if you don't see this when you type in ls and hit enter, then that means like something is not quite right. So let me know if that's not the case. Oh no, Parker got terminal creation failed. Oh, now it's working. Oh, cool. Okay, I'm glad that it only temporarily failed to create. Yeah, it was a little slow to wake up. Okay, so the way that we're going to go ahead and put this onto Quarto Pub is we're going to use this command Quarto publish, and then Quarto Pub. And here, I'll make this bigger. Whoops. Make this window a little bigger. And I will copy and paste this command into the Zoom chat too. But so this is a command that we're going to type in. It's basically saying like, hey, Quarto, we want to publish what, you know, the stuff that's in the folder that we're in, and we want to do it to Quarto Pub. So when I hit enter, it should probably then, now we need to authenticate. Basically, we need to connect our Quarto Pub account like with our local instance. And so it's asking me, do you want to publish with this account? That's the email address that I guess I used to sign up for Quarto Pub with. I don't know why I did that instead of my U of A email, but so I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to ask me what I want the site name to be. And I think it did this based on the title of my website here. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter again. And then hopefully it will render the website and then push it onto Quarto Pub. And it'll probably pop up in a browser window when it's done. Okay, and so here we go. I now have this website that I just created on Quarto Pub. And so the URL for the Quarto Pub websites are, I think, your username.quarto.pub/ and then there's this thing called the slug. That's sort of the end part of your URL. And that's named based on whatever your website was called. So now theoretically, anyone can go to this website and see what I'm seeing right
now. Torbit is having some difficulty.
Oh, hi. What is going on?
Yeah, I got a message that says you need to authorize your account for Quarto Pub.
Oh, because mine's already authorized. Yeah.
Please be sure you're logged into and press Y or what.
Yeah.
To authorize.
Go ahead and hit yes. It should just take you to the website and you'll put in your password to log in or something like that.
That's right. Sorry, I already did the authentication step, and so that's why it skipped it. I thought it looked weird. That probably happened for everyone else too, right? Did you have that question like?
Yeah.
Did. Okay. So yeah, I think you should be able to just say yes to that. And then if you're logged into your browser or into Quarto Pub on your browser, I think it doesn't even make you do anything else.
Quarto CLI would like to use your Quarto Pub account. Yes, allow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit probably enter.
Okay.
CLI stands for command line interface. So that's just like the Quarto program on your computer wants to be able to authenticate.
You may close this window. So now it should work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah, if you go back to our studio, you might have to enter again, maybe. I'm also realizing this didn't really end up looking like I expected it to. So, oh, sorry.
Now it says error in Watcher.
Oh no.
Error generic. Should you share screen or?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Go ahead and share your screen, especially if other people have this problem. Oh, yeah, you should be able to, yeah, you should be able to share your screen. The settings are set up. Oy. I've not seen that error yet.
I clicked, may have gone too quickly. Maybe I should restart with
Is
just
your website there though? I thought I saw it for a second. Is it on in the web browser?
Let's see.
It did look like it. I mean, also I probably, yeah, would just hit the up arrow and run that command again.
Oh yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's good. I don't know what that error means, but yeah, hopefully it's a
Let's just get rid of that guy.
temporary thing. Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like maybe a problem with the viewer connection.
Oh,
Yeah,
so that error was for the locally.
Yeah, I think it's the viewer update pane got confused, maybe. I'm interpolating quite a lot, but
I mean, if you want to test and make sure it worked, I would go to the terminal and hit the up arrow to get that command again, the Quarto publish, and then hit enter. And so, yeah, you want to do capital Y, enter, yes. Okay, and now it's rendering the website and pushing it. And yeah, that error did pop up again. But if the
but it is working. Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does say in the terminal there that it's, you know, published and working. So. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like it worked for you. Cool.
Okay. Who knows?
Yeah, that is bizarre. Well, yeah, it's something like in the process of like pushing it to Quarto Pub, it's causing the viewer pane to like, I don't know, something weird is happening. Well, and also as long as you can still render it locally too, which you might want to test out.
How do I do?
I mean, we see it there, so it should be
Yeah, we
working.
do see it. It's probably fine.
Okay.
I think you're safe to ignore that.
Okay.
For now. If it causes other problems, let us know. Okay, so does everybody have a website on Quarto Pub now? If you do, give me a green check. And if you had problems, which wouldn't be too surprising, feel free to let us know. Okay, looks like that worked for most people. Yeah, no one had any other problems. I'm very surprised by that. This was a step that I expected there to be a lot of errors. Like, actually, when I first did this the other day, it failed for me when I tried to push a Quarto Pub because my version of Quarto was like very, very out of date. And so it didn't even like have an option for Quarto Pub at the time. So I had to figure that out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Oh no, all my windows are gone. Okay. Okay, so now hopefully everybody is seeing in the browser window, you're seeing your version of this website. So the only thing that's probably different is yours is the whatever you called it. You called it your name or something else. And so we're viewing right now is like the website, but also like the Quarto Pub information about it. So there's this like this panel over here that has the title of the website, and then it also has a slug. So if you want to change this slug right here, you can customize that. So you can't change the base URL. It'll be based on whatever your username is. But if you want to change this last bit of the URL, if you change the slug, you know, you can call it Kristina Riemer new or something, should update that URL. Yeah.
And if you want it to be just KristinaRiemer.quarto.pub, you can click that default site checkbox too.
That's right.
You only get one thing that can be at that URL, obviously. But if you want it to be a shorter one for your personal website, you can do that.
And I will say, so this reminds me of like Torbert's question earlier about like, you know, will people like view what you're doing differently, like, or kind of see like your level of expertise based on this? And I know when you can also put these Quarto websites onto GitHub pages, and there you end up with a URL that's like name.github.io. Actually, my Quarto, like my actual website is on that KristinaRiemer.github.io. And when I see people's personal websites and I see github.io on them, like I know then at least like they're using GitHub, right? And so that's something I can talk with people about. Like I know that they're at that level where they've used GitHub enough to be able to put their personal website on that platform. And so it's not good or bad. It just signals something about like what people are, what people are doing. And in the same way that these Quarto pub URLs would be like, oh, this person has used Quarto, at least for their website. Like that's something that we have in common.
And that's one of the options where you're not publishing to Quarto, you're publishing to the GitHub that you said is a little more involved, right?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
So there's like those 10 different options to publish. And we chose Quarto Web, we could choose Posit, you chose GitHub. That's the option you're talking about, right?
Yeah, so for my actual like professional page, this one right here, this is deployed using GitHub pages.
Right.
And so that's why that's that URL, the github.io, is because it's through GitHub pages, which we can show people that too. We just chose not to here because we didn't want to also have to show people how to use Git and GitHub. So yeah. Good questions. Thank you, Torbit. Okay, so everybody now has a working website. And so technically we've completed 2 out of 3 of the objectives of this workshop already. So that's great. Oh, there's something else I was going to say about this. Oh, yeah. So a suggestion I would make for how you work on your website, like make changes to it, which we'll do here in a minute. I would generally recommend that you make a lot of your changes locally here. So change your files, save them, and then render the website locally. Because you saw that like pushing it to GitHub or to Quarto Pub takes even longer. And so I wouldn't suggest that you make one small change and then you publish to Quarto Pub. I would recommend like making a lot of your changes locally. And then once you like kind of like how it looks, then you can push it to Quarto Pub just to save yourself a little bit of time. So yeah. Okay. We are going to move on to some of the customization options. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts before we do that? Yep. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna walk through a few things. I think I have a list in the slides of some of the things we're gonna talk about in terms of changing the website. So we're gonna add a page to our website. We're gonna talk about the templates that you can use for your about page. We're gonna see how we can change our theme to like one of like a bunch of preset themes. We're gonna add a logo to the nav bar, kind of like this one right here. And then I put add blog and then do fancy CSS stuff here. We're not going to actually do those things like adding a blog with blog posts. I thought was just like a little bit too much for this workshop, but we can talk about how you do that. And then also there's a lot of other things that you can do that we're not covering here. So like if there's things you want to do to your website or make it look a certain way, like you can ask us, also like Google for it. And someone else has probably done it before. So. And I haven't done anything fancy with my Quarto website, but I can probably help people figure out how to do fancier things. So let's go ahead and go back to our studio and we'll make some of these changes just to see how to do it and get everyone comfortable with it. And hopefully we'll end up with like a website that looks at least like a little better than this one that's just using all the default stuff. Okay, so let's add a new page. And so what we saw from before on our website, we have 2 pages and each page corresponds to a different Quarto document. So there's the about and the index. Let's go ahead and add a new Quarto document to this. So I'm going to go here in this upper left-hand corner, click on it, and go down to the Quarto document option. And so just like with rendering the website, you can create a new file on in our studio like a couple of different ways. So a window pops up for this new Quarto document. You can put in some information. Let's go ahead and call this new page publications. So say we want to add like our publications to our website. You can put an author, you can put your name here if you want, or not. It's up to you. Kristina. And then down here, this gives the options for what you want to output your Quarto document as. And so if you're working on one that's standalone and you want to render it as a PDF or a Word document, you can choose those options. I'm like 99.9% sure though, for a Quarto website, you want to render it HTML. Also, I think, so rendering Quarto documents to PDFs requires like installing some extra stuff on your computer, which I think is easy now. It used to be really hard, but I'm pretty sure it's easier now. Okay, so go ahead and click create. And a new Quarto document should pop up with a little bit of YAML at the top of it. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little bit of text in here so our website actually like says something on it. Actually, I'll do this in the plain text version of my Quarto doc. So below the YAML, I'm just gonna put in a header with a pound sign that says publications. You can put in what I'm putting in or put whatever you want in here, but it'd be nice to just put a little bit of content so it's not just an empty page. I'll go ahead and say, I'll put in a fake publication here that is not real. Okay. Oh yeah, so the other way you can create Quarto documents or new Quarto documents is doing file.
Okay,
and new
one
file.
second, it's going kind of fast.
Okay, yes, I can stop for a moment. Actually, so when everyone has a, well, we'll add one more step. No. So when everyone has a new Quarto document and has put a little bit of content in it, go ahead and give me a green check. See, about half of the people are there, so it's good we stopped. Thanks, Torbit. And yeah, if you need me to re-show how to do anything, yeah, feel free to ask. Okay, looks like that's most folks. So yeah, once you have this new Quarto document and you have some stuff in it, you want to go ahead and save it. I'm going to call it publications because it's basically, that's what this page is going to be, is publications. So I'm going to name it something reasonable. I'm going to save that right in my project. So now hopefully in that folder with all of your project files, you should see a new file that's called publications. So we have a new page, but we haven't yet actually incorporated it into our website yet. So we need to do that. The way that we do that is, oh, hi.
So we have, when we have the code on the left, what was the step again? We get to save it?
To save it?
Okay, so I have the code on the left like you have. And then what's the next step after that before we're gonna publish it?
You want to save it.
Okay.
So you can click the save button here.
Okay.
Control S.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same way you'd save like an R script.
So that's asking where to save it?
Yeah, and you're gonna want to save it in this folder. It should have automatically popped up in the right place probably, but you're gonna want to save it in this folder with all the rest of our files for the website.
Okay, so that is, so it's a save file untitled opened, and we just choose Quarto or site?
You want to leave it in, so you don't want to put it in the underscore site folder. You want to put it above that.
Put it in the which folder?
You want to put it in whatever you call, so what did you call your RStudio project?
The version of, okay, yeah, put it on the desktop. Put it on the desktop Torbit McNeil website.
Yeah, so you probably want to put it in that folder, Torbit McNeil website. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it should be saved alongside like all of these other files that were already created.
It's not allowing me to save.
What? What is it saying?
It's just not allowing me to click it. Should I share screen?
Yeah. You can share a screen. So you're gonna want to, oh, you're gonna have to give it a name.
Okay. So I was just gonna click that.
Yeah, you want to double click there. And so yeah, and here's where you're gonna want to then you're gonna name it. I mean, if you're gonna do a publications page, you're gonna name it publications.qmd. Or I guess that's under save as type, probably. I don't know, but that option might not come up. I would just leave it, yeah. Or
that should work.
I think that'll work. I'm sorry, I have a Mac, so I'm like, yeah. So if you click save, okay, yeah, cool. I was worried by putting the QMD in the name, it would give it like 2.qmds in a row.
Do you want to look maybe in that files tab there you have on the right, in the same like panel, yeah, right in there, and then from in there, click that little blue cube R icon that's over on the right.
Further right.
See that above the word modified?
It's right next to the 3 periods in a row.
Yeah, click that blue R cube next to those 3 dots.
Okay.
And that should take you to the project.
This guy?
Yeah, go ahead and click that. Go to project directory.
I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, that was so cool. I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, that's
just
really
wanted
nice.
to check. And so you can see there, you did save it in the right spot, and it is called publications.qmd. So great.
Okay, thank you.
So you are up to speed. And hopefully that helped clarify for everyone else how to save your file and where to save it. Okay, share my screen again. Okay, this is in my way. Sorry, every time I reshare my screen, I have to like move stuff around. It's a little bit of a pain. So everyone can see my RStudio again, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've created this new page, but it's not currently like on our website. So if you rendered your website right now, this page wouldn't show up yet. That's because we need to go to this Quarto YAML file and we need to add that as a new page. And so you can see right here under this navbar and navbar and then left, it's got one sort of entry for the home page and then one entry for the about page. And then we want to just add our publications page. And you want to follow the format. So this is one thing about YAML is like it is very particular about how things are formatted. So if you have errors, it could be due to like everything needs to like look the same. There need to be the right number of indents and spaces and things like that. So just pay attention to those. But you should be able to, on the next line, put a dash space and then type in the name of this new file. So if you call it publications or if you call it something else, you want to go ahead and type in the name of that file, exactly how it is. So like, for example, Torbit, when he named his, he capitalized the P. So Torbit would want the P capitalized here. And then once you've done that, save your Quarto YAML. Okay, give them a second to do that. And then once you've done that, to see if it actually worked, you can render your website locally. And you should see that new publications page show up. So let's see if it worked for me. Yep, publications, woo. And it's got the content that I included in it. Okay, so once you have successfully added that new page to your website, can you give me a green check? Cool, you people are there. But also okay if you're not there yet.
Yeah, mine did not put it up.
It didn't show up when you rendered the website? Okay. So you put publications.qmd here, indented the proper number of times with a space after the dash?
Did.
and the P is capitalized?
Mm-hmm.
Huh, interesting. Okay.
I can do
It
share
looks like-
screen again.
yeah.
It takes time.
It looks like we've got another, oops. We've got someone else has a question too, so go ahead and share your screen, Target. Okay. So when you click on the three, the drop-down menu on your website, so the three lines to the left of your name. Oh, it did show up. It's right there.
Okay, it just didn't show up here.
No,
Okay.
because so each of these is displaying a page of your
Okay.
website.
Okay.
And
if I go
so
to
when
there-
you render your website, it automatically brings you up on your home page. But
Okay.
then if
so
you
I do the drop down menu and I go to publications or about.
yeah.
Okay.
And it looks, I think it looks
This
a
is like
little
the
funny.
mobile view.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like squished, right?
Okay.
And you
Okay.
can change it. I mean, I'd have to
There's
look
a
and
little-
see how to do this, but
A little
Oh.
pop-out window button up at the top there, right? You see there's like a little
just
no, the next to that, see that red X? You see the red X?
Mhm.
To the right of that, you see that? That'll open it up in your browser and you can see what it looks like there.
Okay.
yeah, there you go.
So you see that it shows up that like that. And if you make that window small enough, it won't have room for the nav bar, so it'll automatically turn it into that little 3 lines drop down menu thing. That's basically the mobile view. So the nice thing about these Quarto websites is that they by default look pretty good on a iPhone or a Android phone.
Okay.
Which is something like some web developers I think spend a lot of time on, is making sure things work on different types of devices. So that's kind of built in. I think someone else, Laurel, did you figure, you have a red check or a green check now? Did you figure out?
Yes, I did. It was the same thing. I just wasn't seeing it because it wasn't displaying the publication as part in the small view that I had. So,
Yeah, got it. Yeah, definitely. It's a little like it looks different in different windows, which is makes it a
Yes.
little confusing. So I'm glad you're able to figure it out. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like everybody was able to successfully add a new page, which is great. Does anyone have any questions right now?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when I do mine, I put a couple of things in, and so the formatting isn't great. It looks, I don't know, like the spacing between items isn't great, or I wanted it to be double spaced or indented. I'm assuming there's some way to do that.
Yeah. Did your text, it was supposed to be on 2 lines, but it was on 1.
It's on separate lines, but oops, what's happening here? But it is like the hashtag, it's like hashtag presentations, and then it has everything kind of jumbled a little bit, and then because I'm doing presentations and publications. So anyway, it just
Do you
the
want to
title
do you want to share your screen?
Sure, it's let's see.
I think I know what you're talking about, but it'll be easier to see. And so your question right here is about Markdown, like the Markdown formatting.
So it's just this stuff right here, where it says, and then this down here. And the formatting, like there should be spaces between some of these things.
So one thing about the headers, the reason that they're not rendering properly is you need a space between the pound symbols and the word.
Oh, okay.
So that should hopefully fix that. And then, yeah, something weird about Markdown is that when you have like, I would have to see what your Markdown looks like.
Do you want to maybe show the visual editor a little bit and maybe
in RStudio?
Yeah, because that might be easier way for people to change the headers and stuff.
Oh, you want me to show that?
Or I can show it.
Yeah. Well,
you want me to share? Yeah, I can.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me make this bigger. So this is an example of a Quarto document with the visual editor mode, right? So this visual button is on. This is what it looks like in the source, right? Where if we want to make this a heading, level 2 heading, we have to type hashtag space objective. One of the nice things about the visual editor is that you have this toolbar that's kind of familiar if like you're used to Word or something like that. So if you want to make something into a heading, you can just use this little drop down here. If it's plain text, I can just click on that line and say, oh, no, I want that to be a level 2 header. I can select stuff and I can just use, you know, Command B to make it bold, or Command I to make it italics, or I can use these buttons up here to click on them.
But that's changing the underlying like text file when you do
right.
that.
So if I do something like this, if I say clone a repository, I make it bold, and I switch back to the source, it's done the markdown for me. That's how you do bold and markdown, 2 asterisks surrounding the section. But I don't have to worry about remembering that if I'm doing it with the visual editor. The other thing that's really nice in the visual editor, well, you can do bullet points with this button here. So if I want to turn that bulleted list, I can do that. Or a numbered list, I can do that button. There's also the drop-down menu for all sorts of stuff. There's an insert menu for all sorts of stuff. And there's also a nice keyboard shortcut here. On a Mac, it's Command /, and probably on Windows, it's Control / or something like that. And if I type that, it brings up a thing where I can search. So I'm like, I can't remember how to do it, but I want to insert, you know, a bulleted list. And then I can hit enter and it'll do that for me. Or I want to insert an equation. Okay, yeah, this is how you do math, right? And then, you know, it renders this equation or whatever.
That's really cool. You're doing that with, that's just in the visual, you said?
That's in the, if you're in that visual tab, then, you know, if you forget how to do something in Markdown, you can sometimes figure out how to do it in the visual editor and then switch back to the source as a reminder of how to do it, actually. And it's a nice way to do it. And I find myself mostly working in the visual editor, but sometimes it gets a little annoying to, you know, edit things, or if I want to copy and paste things, sometimes it's easier to do in the source, and I'll switch back to the source editor and then, you know, find what I'm doing and modify it. But you can do a lot of stuff through just this toolbar and not have to know everything about Markdown for it to work.
And when we're in the visual tab, how do we get the header with all those options you have?
This toolbar here.
Yeah. So are we in RStudio here? Or
yeah,
are we
in RStudio.
Quarto. Okay.
We're in RStudio. I'm edit have be able to click on visual and be able to see all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's like your toolbar in Word, sort of equivalent of that, right?
It has this like this. Okay, so it has heading 1 and all this stuff. Okay, so just play around with it. Okay.
Yep.
So, and
you'll also see other options in like these triple dots and stuff. So you mentioned spacing, for example. If I click here on a bulleted list, I can choose whether I want it to be a tight layout or not, and that'll change the spacing. So there's a lot you can do in the visual editor and not have to worry about Markdown stuff. And it's a little bit, if you're not as familiar with Markdown, it's a little bit maybe safer. You don't end up with that kind of you know, very simple thing with like just the spacing being messed up, like Sarah was showing.
Well, and I think the spacing being messed up is because if you do in the text file, if you have like one line after the other with no
if I did
space
this
between them,
if I did this, it's gonna look like that.
So the reason that all your text was like clumped up like that was because everything was on each consecutive line. You probably wanted to turn that into like a bulleted list, right? And so that means every line is going to need like a dash or an asterisk at the beginning of it. But you can do that in the visual editor.
Yeah, and you can also, the other cool thing in Markdown is it doesn't really care about extra spaces, which is kind of annoying if you want to actually add extra spaces. But I can do this. I can do like put a bunch of spaces in there, and then I go to visual mode and it looks normal. It doesn't care about the extra spaces. So like use more space when in doubt to separate elements, and it'll figure it out.
Could I ask what keyboard shortcut was again to get the search list?
Oh, it's Command / or Command, you know, it's the same as the question mark key on my keyboard, at least.
Command question? Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Ryan, I think you put is that the HTML for a paragraph, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I put that in there. I was just, yeah, I guess it's paragraph. I use this stuff. I don't even know what half of it means.
If you know HTML, you can also write HTML in the source editor, and that works too. But I think we're working on an assumption that most people don't write a lot of just straight raw HTML in this workshop. But yeah, you can definitely do that.
Not since like the days of MySpace. Wait, does that date me? Does it make me young or old? I don't even know. Somewhere in between.
And like the advantage of using the source, maybe if you're getting like super nerdy, you can do a few things that you couldn't do in the visual as easily. The visual is kind of like if you're creating a website with Weebly or some of these point and clicks, you're kind of getting to that type of, accessibility and ease of use versus the source code. You can get to the really nitty gritty. Is that a way to think about the differences?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
I think it depends on kind of like how much time you want to spend point and clicking versus typing. And so if you like want to keep your hands on the keyboard a lot and not use your mouse a lot, like, which is what a lot of programmers do, because it's faster. Not that we're really aiming for speed here, but like with the text, like the raw text, the source, you can like basically type everything in the way it should be or the way you want it to be, but then you have to be really familiar with Markdown. So the visual editor is a nice, like, sort of intermediate, I think. Yeah, these are great questions and comments. Does anyone else have anything? Sarah, were you able to get that looking a little more like you wanted it to?
Yeah, that was super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, sorry, we couldn't get into the Markdown too much here. But that is something we have taught before and can teach more of, like what the different options are with the Markdown on the Quarto docs. Okay, got a little less than 20 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to get through some more of the customization options, but I probably won't get through all of them, which is okay. So one of the other common things people tend to like to do is to customize the theme of your website. And so right now I'm using what is the default theme, which is called Cosmo. And so there are a bunch of these built-in themes that you can choose from for your Quarto website. And those come from this organization, I guess, called Boot Swatch. And so they have a bunch of these different free themes. If you scroll down, you can see there's a bunch of different names of these themes. And if you want to see what they look like, you can click on one. Yeah. And I have hopefully I got all of the links for everything that we've talked about, like all the resources and stuff are in the slides and also in the notes for the workshop. So if you don't catch something now and don't remember what it's called, those resources should be there too. But yeah, so this is a theme on Boot Swatch called Minty. And so if you look at it, you can kind of get an idea of like the color and like what things are shaped like and stuff like that. I'm probably obviously like not a web designer, so I can't tell you like the details of a lot of these things. But it should be pretty straightforward to just go and like find a theme that you like, and then you can change your website to that theme. I hadn't noticed this quartz one. I like this one. It's super colorful. I'm gonna go ahead and change my theme to quartz. If you want to do quartz or do another one, pick your poison. But so the way you would change that theme is by going to the Quarto YAML again, and then down under the format, HTML theme. It's Cosmo right now is the default when you created that the Quarto website project. But I'm gonna go ahead and change mine to quartz. And you got to save that. And then we can look and see if it worked by building it again. Oh, I guess it built it on the fly. Wow. Didn't expect that. I didn't even have to click render.
Yeah, Quarto preview creates like a version, like if it's still running in that background jobs. And so when you save your files, it should update the thing that's in the viewer pane.
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it to be able to do it on the fly. I mean, I assume it didn't do it until I saved.
Until you save, yeah. It's when you save, it'll update stuff.
Yeah, wow.
I
that's
like that
cool.
theme. It's kind of wild.
This is yeah,
Nice.
it's very like, I mean, appropriate right now for like Barbie and stuff, you know, rocking the cool bright colors. But yeah,
I have a question, Kristina. Why does it say publications twice on your publications page? I'm wondering if other people maybe have that and want to know.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that with about page templates in a minute.
Okay,
but
that's fine.
So actually, why does it say that? I'm actually not really.
The header.
I think it's the title versus the
what's in the document.
Versus what's in the document. Yeah. So there's a header here that's publications, capital P. That's this one right here. This title comes from the name of the document. And so you can change that name. And I'm using this as an example, right? So the basic website had a page that's called home, but the underlying page is called index. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's simpler than that. I think in your publications.qmd, it's the title, right? It's just there's a title that up there. So if you
get rid of it,
if you get rid of it, or if you get rid of the header, the level 1 header, and change the title to capital P publications.
Oh, I see. So like this.
I just thought it would be useful for people to see that the title does show up on the website there, so you can.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't even have to render it again. This is still running. That's cool. Okay, so now there's only one publications. Yeah. So yeah, I guess sort of messing around. I was talking about like what they're called here, but you're talking about what's displayed on the page. So yeah, now there's only one publications header. But if I put that like,
and then you may want to get rid of like author too, just because you have the author below too.
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't want that to show up on a real publications page because it doesn't.
But it seems like the top part's like a header, and then you do the header with the hashtag too. But yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know what else, if you put other stuff in this YAML, if it shows up. Save that, and it's not rendering. Oh, I need to reload the page, don't I? Okay, yeah, so now it's like got two headers. One is the title of the YAML, and then one is a header. So yeah. Did I miss how to change the look? Do we need to download? Yeah, no, you shouldn't need to download anything to change the theme to one of those. I think there's 25 of those boot swatch themes. You should be able to change this right here to the name. And well, something that was a little confusing, I think, is that these are all listed like capital, they're capitalized, but I think they have to be lowercase. I don't think they work if you capitalize them here. Oh, no, they do work. Okay, so I guess it's not case sensitive. Good to know. Sorry, I'm also figuring some of these things out on the fly. Like I've created my own website, but it's been a while. So, and I'm
that's another advantage of using like RStudio. That platform's connected to like this. You get all these different backgrounds. You know?
Yeah, and these are the built-in themes. If you are like a website guru and like want some of these colors and like how things are laid out to be different, or use like special fonts, there's ways to do that. I don't know those ways off the top of my head, but I could help with some of those things. But I know especially if you want to like change the color themes of some of this to something more specific, I think that requires CSS. So yeah, like I think you can get really deep in this, right? Like super deep in this if you have, especially if you have a really specific idea of what you want. Like doing things that kind of outside of some of the sort of defaults are possible most of the time, but it takes like it will take some work to get to that point. So yeah. Okay, awesome. This is some good conversation. The next thing I was going to cover was that one of the other nice like sort of built-in things is that they have all these templates for an about page. And so that's like if you're you know, I think with like my website, for example, like my actual personal website, I have this about page right here that is, you know, the introductory, like, you know, what am I doing? A picture of me, some links to some social media stuff, and then like my background. And so they have a bunch of templates for these about page. Well, not a bunch. I think there's 5 of them that you can just use sort of plug and play pretty quickly. So we'll walk through how to do that because it's useful and pretty neat. So yeah, there's all these 5 templates, and you can see a preview of what they look like down here. So this one has like the picture at the top in a circle, and then some text, and then like some links to social media. But then this one's very different. It's got the picture on the left. I think this is the one that I used on my website. So yeah, so there's these different options for these templates. So this is a nice way to like kind of quickly like jazz up your page if it's like about yourself. Or I guess it could be about like, you could use this about page template for like a research project. You would just change what some of this content is. And so let's walk through how to do that. Remember. I didn't leave myself very clear notes for this. Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah, there we go. That's helpful. Yeah, so if you want to change a template, okay, yeah, so you want to change the YAML that's on like whatever page that you're using for your about page. So that chunk at the top. And so we want to go ahead and add this little bit, this about, and then template, and the name of the template we're switching to. I don't know if this will work without an image, but we'll see. So yeah, if I want to be changing, this is my index page, which is the home page right now. I'm going to go ahead and add to that YAML. What is it? About and template. So I think it's like this.
You got the about or the index? We got the index.
This is the index page, but I'm turning it into an about page. And there isn't I have an about page too. This is going to get confusing, I think. Because I guess this is so the way that this,
yeah, like there's this default thing that the home page of a website is usually called index.
Yeah,
it's like a website thing.
But we could use our actual about. I'm gonna go ahead and just like get rid of the index off of the website. You see how it has this here where it's like saying, okay, this is what the page, where the file of the page should come from. This is what the page should be called. And so that's why when I go to my dropdown, this is called home. And we could all call that whatever we want. You know, we could call this like this starting line or something. So if this, yeah, so now I change it to starting. But so it's common for people's personal websites to start out like with an about page about themselves. So if I just get rid of the, well, I don't want to get rid of it because I'll forget what it's. I'm going to copy this. Sorry, I like don't have this as clearly mapped out in my mind as I should. So if I want to simplify my website and not have both an index page and an about page, I just want an about page. I could, for example, do my YAML like this, and I'll copy and paste.
Would you recommend that?
I mean, I don't. It probably depends on what you want to do.
You might have to have an index. I'm not sure. I'm
really?
Not sure actually. I don't know. I guess it looks like it works fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my personal page, I don't have an index, right? All I have is the about. And the way that these are just, I mean, I'm assuming the about then is like the default starting page, right? But I think it probably, the default page that shows up when you first open a website is probably whatever of these pages is first in line, but I don't know for sure. That would be good to know. But so if I want to add that template to this about page, I'm going to grab this and move it over here. And again, yeah, this YAML is like, it's finicky, right? Like you have to have, everything needs to have the right number of like spaces and things like that. So if I go to this about page, let me see if I can get this to work. I think this needs to be tabbed. And I want to change this to one of the other templates. I'll change it to Jala too. I think this should work, but I don't really know, to be quite honest. So I'm trying to add that template in. The one thing I'm not sure is if I don't put an image in, it might not work. Oh, yeah, so it did. Right, it moved everything to the center because that's how this Jala template is set up. But if I want to add an image to it, and it might take a little bit too long to do this, but I can add an image to, well, I'll show this. Probably don't try to do this, like follow along with this, because I'll probably do it a little too fast. But like if I want to go and grab an image of myself from online, for example, use this really old image, old headshot. I still had a brown hair then. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this image and I'm going to save it in my folder, my project folder, like the main project folder. And I'll go ahead and just call it headshot. And so then I can add this to my about page because this is like, because of it being a template, I can add the image by doing this, hopefully. So let's see if that worked. Oh, I probably have to re-render it because there's a new file. I'm running out of time here. I definitely didn't get to everything I wanted to cover, but that's okay. You all have access to the notes, so. There we go. Okay, it did work. Okay, so I just added a picture of myself to this about page, which is probably something you wanted to do. And so the way I did that is by adding this pointer in the YAML to this new image file that I added into my website folder. Okay, and sorry if that was fast. Yeah, we can help people do this if you want to do it on your own website. I was hoping we'd get our websites a little bit more to the point where like it looks okay, but mine's still kind of like a mess, which is okay. I also can redeploy this to Quarto Pub, and you can too. And just make sure it looks like it does locally before I share it with anyone. I mean, I wouldn't want to share this with anyone anyways. This doesn't look very good right now, but it will. Yep, so there we go. I have this website. There is an about page that still doesn't have very much content. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. We are almost out of time, and I don't want to hold people past 1 o'clock. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. You got an idea of how to sort of go about like setting up a Quarto website, publishing it online, and then starting to get into the customization. But I think that's the thing right there. Like that can be the big time sink, is like figuring out how to make it look like you want it to look like. So there's a lot more to that. If you want to look at the notes for the workshop, there were a few other things that I was going to cover that I didn't, but otherwise on the slides, here are a bunch of resources for the stuff that we talked about. So feel free to poke around with those. I also put some links to some other Quarto websites. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I swapped out Heidi's for you.
Yeah, thank you. Some links to some nice looking Quarto websites, including links to the code. So you can go to people's GitHub repos, and if you want to figure out how to do something, this is one of the ways you can figure out how to do something.
Steal ideas.
Yeah. Share ideas.
Share ideas. Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, let us know if you have questions. You can email us or come to our drop-in hours on Tuesday mornings. And I will also follow up and send an email to everyone with like links to some of the stuff that we talked about, and links to a survey if you could fill it out for us. We're just trying to figure out how well we're doing with the workshops, and yeah, how's it's going for people. So awesome. Sorry, that was
have
crash
fun.
Course. Yeah.
have fun customizing and learning, everyone.
Yeah, and if you want to share your website with us after you've worked on it,
yes, please
we
do.
would love to see people's websites. So, and if you have questions about publishing on Posit Connect or publishing on GitHub pages, we can also talk with you about that. It's just too much to cover in a 2-hour workshop. So yeah, thank you everyone. Have a good rest of your
Yeah, thanks for
Wednesday.
coming.
And we'll see y'all soon.